Good morning and welcome to another Make It Meaningful. I'm Garden Girl Jen Gallacher. So this week all the garden girls have been talking about capture and how you can uniquely capture moments, especially milestones, in your layouts. So sometimes you are going to function as the person that captures memories for extended family members. Say for instance you have a sibling who is having a baby, or maybe you have a sibling who is hosting a party that asks you to be the photographer, or maybe just by nature, or maybe just for the fact that you have the best camera at the event, you start to be the photographer for the event. So you are the one that captures these particular milestones and memories. So this week I'm going to create a layout about my niece, and I went to the hospital shortly after she was born and captured her photos, her first newborn photos, for my sister. And from those photos I have been able to document some of my feelings about her birth. So even though these photos were designated for my sister, I can also use them in my own scrapbooks because I love my niece dearly. So this week I want you to think about how have you served as the photographer for family or school events or whatever, and how can you capture those memories in your scrapbooks. Pick one or two things that maybe you haven't discussed before and maybe you didn't consider about putting them in your particular scrapbooks, and let's go ahead and add them this week. So let's get started with the layout. So for this baby layout, we're going to do an 8.5 by 11 inch layout. And I have pre-cut some different pattern papers to use as the foundation for the top of this layout. One is a solid piece of pattern paper. It is actually pattern paper. You could also use something that is more like a cardstock. This is from a Cartabella collection, but again, anything that kind of has this teal green will work. Another Cartabella paper, this is a polka dot paper. On the other side is stars, but again, simply look for patterns that you already have or shop for patterns that are similar. All I did was make sure that they match. And then on top, I cut and centered the design from a 12 by 12 sheet of paper from crepe paper. And it is a generational genealogy sheet, a family history sheet where you fill in names and things, which I thought would be fun for this baby layout. So the first thing we're going to do is assemble the top of the layout. And again, I have pre-cut everything so that we can start this layout. And then this is cut to 6 by 6 inches. You could also use a piece of pattern paper from a 6 by 6 paper pad. We're just building up a foundation here. I tried to pick, this is actually a layout about a little girl, but I really wanted to use some of these blues. And it's okay to use blues because I'm going to bring pink in later. Now I want to add some misting to this, but I'm not going to actually spray it. I'm going to splatter it. So I'm going to take the rest of this pattern paper to use as a protection. If you have a sheet of extra leftover paper, you can do that. Shake it up really good. Now each particular mist has instructions about how to do this. Heidi Swapp's Color Shine, she does shake. Others say that you kind of twist. Basically you get a lot on the applicator, and then you're going to drop it on the page. And you can do as much or as little as you like, but you are going to need to leave some time for it to dry. Now as this goes on, it almost looks like a mustard color, but it will dry in a very beautiful golden tone with hints of shimmer and shine to it. So you can see how I've done that. So I'm going to allow that to dry, and then we'll come back and finish the rest of the layout. So you can see that it dries a beautiful gold shimmer with a little bit of a metallic sheen to it. I think that's why they call it color magic. It is wonderful. So to the bottom of the layout, I'm going to use a beautiful baby print that has a chevron on the other side. And there has been some chatter on the message board about decorative scissors. And yes, I do have decorative scissors. These are ones that I have had for a very long time, and I use them quite frequently, but they are just a big scallop. And I interchange these with border punches. So these are some old ones from Provo Craft, and I only kept a few of them. I didn't keep all of them, but I do love the scallop and the pinked edges. All right, we're going to cut this the same width as some of these other pattern papers. So I just want to trim this off. Using my paper trimmer. want to try and get all the scallops intact. If I have a little bit extra, just to make sure that the scallops go all the way across and I don't have a weird place at the bottom. I'm going to adhere this to the bottom, and this is where I'm starting to bring in the pink, but again you can see that the green and the blue also appear on this crepe paper pattern paper. To the top of that, I'm going to use a piece of pattern paper that you might not think would go with baby. It's a typewriter pattern paper, but I loved it and it was soft and feminine, and to make it even more feminine, I've attached just some lace that I had on hand to the bottom, and little feminine details like this can make a project even more special. So go ahead and attach that right on top of the scallop. So I'm bringing in some pink so it's looking a little less manly. Then across the top of that, I'm using a paper that says today. And because this is a milestone, I wanted something that kind of signified that today was special. And we're going to cover just that bottom section of that pattern paper. You can butt it right up against the bottom. And it is slightly wider. When I cut my pattern paper for the bottom of my pages, I like to vary both the length and the width. Across the top of that, I have taken some gold glitter paper and I have pinked the edges. Now another way to do this is to actually use gold tape, but this was a little bit more solid and sturdy, and it also had the glitter embedded. Now the Wow paper from American Crafts is a good one, or maybe it's called Pow. Honestly, I can't remember right now, but it is a fun paper to use. And I wanted to bring in some of the gold that I used up in the spray down here at the bottom. So I'm going to do that by using that glitter paper. Then I found a ribbon that is a tan, and it's kind of a mid-tone of the tan that I'm already using. And I'm actually going to wrap that right around the page and tie it into a bow. If you wanted to save some of the ribbon, you could trim it off so that you are only using the part of the ribbon that is on top of the layout, so you wouldn't need that bottom part. And we'll just pull that taut, and then we'll slide it till we get it into a position that we like. And we can trim off any extra that we have. Now I want to show you another object that you can add some gold lame, and I've already added to a button to it. But if you have chipboard lying around or corrugated items, look how gorgeous it looks with the same gold lame spray. Again, I had to be a little generous to get a good coating with it, and it took a little bit of time to dry. It took an hour or two to dry because I really soaked this. But just because you have something doesn't mean you can't cover it in something new. For instance, if you wanted to use a doily, you can change the color of this by misting it. And depending on how much mist you use, you can alter the color. So I always like to alter the color. I'm going to place this right in the center of the bow. Again, I've taken a pearl pink button and I've tied it with twine. And then to the center of that, I'm just going to take a pearl button from Maya Road, and I'm going to stab it right through the knot of the bow, and it'll come out the top. We'll arrange the bow behind. So I'm just creating this fun little vignette. The photos I'm going to use are actually two of the same photo, but I just love these photos and I wanted to give it a little more presence on the page, and so I'm going to use two of them. And they will go right in the center here. And you'll notice that the pattern paper isn't perfectly centered behind the photos, and that is okay. What I'm trying to center is the distance from the edges. And then to hold them in place, I'm going to add some tan photo corners, and I'm only going to do them on the very outside corners. Again, that brings in that craft and tan that I've used throughout this layout. These particular ones, these photo corners are from Canson. ThermaWeb also has them, and I do love the ThermaWeb ones. They even have them in glitter, so if you wanted to add more glitter to your page, you could use the gold glitter. Lots of different ones. To the very top of the photo and the pattern paper, I have taken a tag and I have actually stamped the date on which my niece was born. And I just cut off the top because I only need the top. And we'll have that stick out just a little bit. And then I'm going to add another button tied with twine to bring in that pink again. And then I'm going to create a little vignette with both sequins and the button. And you'll notice that I'm using two different sizes of sequins. One is large and one is small with that button. That just softens that up a little bit. So for the journaling, I'm going to take half a doily and add it just below this ribbon. Be careful when you're adding doilies, they are fairly fragile. And then I have taken some journaling and I have used a circle punch that was the same diameter as the half circle here. Now I do want to ink the edges a little bit, so I'm going to use one of these chalk inkers from Prima, and I'm just going to drag it along the edge just to distress it a little bit. This is kind of a vintage looking layout, and it is a vintage baby layout, so we'll just add a little bit of ink to the edges here. And then we'll adhere this right to the bottom of this layout. Right in the center of that half circle. Then for the title, I have cut with my Silhouette die cut machine a Sweet Dreams die. Now I like to use a zig glue pen for this. So we'll just paint the back. You can also use a dot roller, just depending on how thin your cut is will determine the kind of adhesive that might work best. You could also use glue dots strategically placed. And we're actually going to place this right on top of that ribbon. We'll use the ribbon as a guide for placement. And just make sure as you're putting it down that you manipulate your cut a little bit so the letters all look correct. And then I want to add a little bit more gold to the bottom, so again I'm going to use some sequins. And we'll just add them in a variety of places. So that we have a visual triangle of 3 gold items. So thank you for joining me for today's Make It Meaningful video. Be sure to think about all the milestones you have in your life, whether they are your own or ones that you share with extended family, and get them in your scrapbooks today. For all the videos in this series, be sure to subscribe to the 2Ps YouTube channel. That way you're notified when a new video is uploaded.